in the
about
entire
it. This
human
guy,
history, I can't tell you one. So
this guy actually said that sense perception, in terms of any one of the five senses, does not necessarily and always entail causal connections. Well, pick any one of the five senses and tell me how a word such as sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste, how any one of these is not a label for a set of causal connections. Take away the causal connections. Do you have hearing? Take away the causal relations. Do you have sight?
I guess if you're
Now,
blind or deaf. No.
Now I know Zog is not stupid enough to believe that. So what's my only alternative? That he's bullshitting. He's lying through his teeth. He's just giving out a barrage of verbiage. And then when you distill that verbiage, oh, you misrepresent it. And it's never ending. And that's why I lose my temper with these kind of people. Because behind it all is not strong and vigorous disagreement. What we have is somebody who's lying. Somebody who's being intellectually dishonest while trying to put on a facade that they're not lying. And this clown does that in his own life. He's a male. He's a man. But he fantasizes and imagines that he wants to be a woman. So he takes hormones, so he grows boobs, and he puts on a wig or grows his hair long, and he tries to look like a woman when he's not. And he puts on a phony voice.
Oh, the hormones do affect his voice as well over time. But you're telling me this person's smart,
well,
right?
It's not that funny.
I'm sure that that's correct. But somebody who's born a male,
yeah, I know.
Who had testicles and has reached puberty, it is extremely rare for a male to have a high-pitched voice like women do.
Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson had one. He'd kill everybody in here.
Okay, no. Listen to me. I grant that. I watched Jeopardy one time, and there was a guy on there. He sounded just like a woman, and he wasn't a homo. Okay, it's extremely rare. But with these people, this is phony.
It's not funny, man.
What, tasteless?
Wait,
it's not funny. I mean,
it's kind of funny.
I said phony, not funny.
I said funny. I laughed. I think it's kind of funny.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Look, and listen, I'm not going to bow down to political correctness where they say that I'm being impolite or disrespectful when I'm not catering to this guy's delusion that he's a woman.
Yeah, and I think you have a right to do that, actually.
Well, you don't tell schizophrenic people the voices in their head are real. That makes them way worse. Makes them way crazier. They go get help.
It just ruins them even further.
Well, I think the biggest problem is that there's been a big fad recently of calling any identity disorders now gender dysphoria, and it leads to a lot of misdiagnoses of people who have severe forms of autism or other mental issues. They get convinced they're trans by whatever community they're in. They transition assuming that it'll help their mental state, when in fact it makes it much worse, because now they've got hormones playing around with the schizophrenia, etc.
When they yell at themselves too, they just like turn their fucking vagina inside out and cut off their dick or something.
I know a couple of trans people who transitioned, and they're perfectly functioning individuals. They're intelligent, they're intelligible, etc., and so forth. So it's not like all people with gender dysphoria who transition are mentally incapable. It's that there are people with other issues who are told that they have gender dysphoria, and because there's such a culture of don't question it, a lot of people get misdiagnosed by non-professionals and then seek all the unnecessary remedies which worsen the situation.
So, hey, Tom, are you there?
Yeah.
Tanner is now arguing against stuff that I say, and we're not even talking about trans issues. This is how messed up this guy is. This guy once claimed that he agreed with me substantively. Now, when I pointed out that somebody was using circular reasoning, he goes, "Oh, well, you support circular reasoning," which he knows that that's not true.
Well, would you like to get him into this room? He's in the room above.
Oh
You
no,
can
no,
talk
I
directly
don't,
to
I
him
don't, I
instead of
don't.
talking past him.
Tanner is another delusional transvestite, and he was.
Tanner's quite intelligent.
Well, I didn't say he wasn't, but he's still
Mm.
delusional.
The beautiful mind guy at schizophrenia, he was genius with the math.
Darth.
And shit.
But,
Yeah,
but,
but the difference,
if you don't
the
do
difference
that,
is the difference is that in some of the more extreme quote mental disorders, there's a far better case for an anatomical neurological disruption than there is for males who fantasize or would like to be women.
No,
You can still
Darth.
make about as good of a case. It's really difficult to tell with an MRI or anything. It's not like they have an excess amount of like the super
Yeah.
excess amount of dopamine, like when you're schizophrenic or something that's super obvious. It's not at all obvious.
It's really difficult,
Listen, even with schizophrenia, there are no physiological tests for that.
Yes, there are. Yeah,
No. Listen, dude. I've actually studied this. There is no blood test for schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a psychological label because people have thought disruptions. Okay. Now there have been studies on the structure of the brain of schizophrenics over the years, showing abnormalities in the lobes of the brain versus normal people. However, within those studies, all of those people were taking psychotropics for decades.
that might turn you schizophrenic.
Okay.
That might do it.
So the question is were the abnormalities in the structure of the brain, did that cause the schizophrenia, or was it being on psychotropics for decades?
I don't think it matters. They had it one way or the other, right?
No, it does matter, because then the question is, what is the etiology, meaning the medical origin of the anatomical abnormality? Okay, is it the anatomical abnormality that itself produced the schizophrenic type of thought disruptions, or were the
decisions the person made over the years to do the drugs?
The other thing is, or is it that the anatomical abnormalities in the lobes of the brain, I'm talking about the structural lobes of the brain,
I know.
when they would do 3 exams, is that the result of being on psychotropics long term? And that can't be ruled out. The point is, all I'm simply saying to you is, I'm not suggesting that schizophrenia is just somebody who has crazy thoughts and that's it. I'm more than willing to acquiesce that some of the more quote extreme mental disorders more than likely have a anatomical etiology. But there are so many categories in psychiatries that don't have anything to support that it's physiological in terms of its origin. Okay.
I mean, maybe not like in the genetic sense. Like you don't have a genetic abnormality that would make the physiological structure screw up genetically, but you might have like, why is that person on psychotropic drugs? The person in theory that's doing them for 20 years and gives themselves schizophrenia. That might be also a different structural abnormality.
In the 1970s, how old are you?
I'm 24.
Okay, so you're too young to remember. In the 1970s, when the homosexuals started to become politically active, and they tried to recruit people in the news media and academia, they were all for promoting that homosexuality was a choice. But as they moved on and wanted to impose their morality on non-homosexuals who opposed homosexualities, that's when they began trying to compare and liken homosexuality to being born black.
I know. I've read the agenda thing. They have that book that's written by that guy.
But there's nothing to support this. I can't tell you how many decades on the news I've heard, oh, we're right on the verge of discovering the gay gene.
It doesn't exist. Like, come on.
I mean,
it
might be a set of genes. It might be a bunch of genes on top of like environmental influences. Like gay guys tend to have been molested like way more often than normal straight guys did as children. That seemed to be a correlative for homosexual males at the very least, but it's not being studied either. Like homosexuality is not a field of study in psychology.
To try and bring
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Tom.
I think to try and bring something that's as complex and subtle as a sexual preference, or even just any preference for that matter, to try and bring it down into a genealogical level. We're like 80 and 90 years away from that. We just don't know enough about the brain, and we don't know enough about genealogy to do that.
I'm sorry. How is this
We don't know
important?
that
Important to what?
Important to any discussion?
What? Maybe that's not important to you. That goes back to the choice
Mhm.
thing we just talked about.
No. Yeah, but how does that relate, to the main topic at hand?
It was a tangent off of other topic that we got down.
Yeah, but how is this relevant?
I don't.
Well,
It
what-
doesn't have to be relevant. We were having a discussion.
No, you were having a conversation all over the place. So the real question is, because I think, Tanner is harmful to Darth's, let's say, topic of discussion. So, this is the main topic. And the problem is that people are well accepting of those issues. So bringing that topic
So
up is not going to
what topic are we
affect that
talking
shit.
about? I'm confused.
Trump.
Oh, we're talking about, Tanner, criticizing Dawkins from its own, side, let's say, right?
Oh, is this a whole circular logic thing?
What?
Oof.
Well,
I'm so
like
confused. We
Tanner,
didn't say anything about Mr. Tanner or Mr. Dawkins or anything like that for the last 20 minutes.
what the fuck? That was the main topic. This is why
I
I'm
think
listening
we
to
were
you.
in different fucking rooms or some shit.
Well, I came
I
here in the
understand.
room to avoid
You were in a different room.
Yeah.
the insanity of Tanner and Zug.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah,
no.
It wasn't
was
so that
running
they
away
could come
from the
down here.
trannies. He was running
I
away from the
understand.
trannies.
Oh shit, Tanner is here. Oh my
Yeah.
fuck, you fucking scared
Pick
me.
him in the
I'm fucking omnipresent, mate.
The Trap Nation is imperialist and will invade any chat you flee to.
There's not a lot of it, though. It's okay, boys.
Set up.
So
set up the
Kathleen, why the
transsexual
fuck are you
colonies.
attacking
Yeah,
Dawkins?
and you see,
here?
that's the problem in many of these debates. People have certain ultimate commitments that they have, and come hell or high water, they're no matter what truth mitigates against their ultimate commitment, they're gonna continue to argue for it, no matter how ignorant, no matter how intellectually dishonest it is.
The same can be said for anyone. That's a pot kettle black
Nope, I'm
scenario
perfect.
there, Mr. Dawkins.
I'm perfect. No.
Yeah, it's human nature there, but the point is this, is that cannot be said of the Christian worldview.
Yes, it can.
No.
It's a it's an entire set of genes that evolved a certain way to argue for
because
that.
no, let me explain to you why it can't, okay? Because in order to argue against the Christian worldview, you're going to have to presuppose that the Christian worldview is
Here we
actual.
go again.
Okay, it's that simple. Now, well, it's certainly it's a legitimate epistemological point, even though you don't agree with it. That in order to argue against the Christian worldview, okay, and I'll quote for you Cornelius Van Til, who possessed a PhD in philosophy. Now, that doesn't make what he's saying true or false to you, but here's somebody who has a PhD in philosophy, and he says, in
also
order,
has a PhD.
in order, oh yeah, big deal, piled higher and deeper. The point is this: in order to attack anti-theism or atheism, one must presuppose theism, meaning Christian theism. Because if somebody says, no, I don't, say, good. Then what will be your epistemological basis along with your ontology by which you will be able to evaluate, critique, and judge Christianity? What is it? You won't be able to do it.
I mean, you could argue that neither one of them matters, because you can look at people and the fact that people exist as being, the ultimate truth for anyone or anything. And if Christianity, which it has done, is a very good what's it called? A structure for people to breed under, obviously, versus atheism, which people don't tend to have nearly as many children. So
Prophet,
you could
I
just
don't
say
mean to
based
be
off of
mean.
that.
I don't mean to be mean, but you're not making any sense.
I don't think you're.
What I'm saying is that it's the argument doesn't matter either way. Who cares if there's a God, if there's not a God? If you don't exist to begin with, or you don't have babies
Look,
to
you're not
continue on with you.
You're well motivated, but you're not understanding the issue. Okay. In order to attack, critique, and judge the Christian worldview, you're going to have to presuppose that the Christian worldview is true, because the Christian worldview reveals and accounts for the prerequisites of the ability to reason and to critique. And if somebody
Well,
says, oh, not
can-
so, I don't need to presuppose the Christian worldview to attack the Christian worldview, then I say, good. Then what is your theory of knowledge? How is it derived from your model of reality? And what is that? And they
Well, you
won't be
can-
able, they won't be able to account for it.
You can use a different worldview that's similar in structure and its justifications.
Islam.
No, you can, well, Tom, the only way that you can challenge the Christian worldview would be from your worldview. Do you understand that?
Hmm.
If you appeal to another worldview that is not your own, that is an appeal to an incoherency. And what I mean by that is this, is that the metaphysical intelligibility of any of your assertions will only be intelligible when it is specific to and derivative to your model of reality. So another model of reality, by definition, is not a possibility within your model of reality, because another model of reality is an antithesis. It is a contradiction to your model of reality.
Devil's
The
advocate.
only contingencies and possibilities that you
Yeah.
can invoke, or hypotheticals, are those that are specific to your model of reality.
You can play devil's advocate and simply invoke another model of reality for argument's sake.
Okay, you did. Okay, so what you just said to me,
Mhm.
means that you didn't understand what I just explained to you, because devil's advocate, okay, when we talk about models of reality, it is not the same as being a devil's advocate to whether or not there's a chunk of gold on Mars, because a chunk of gold on Mars is not the ultimacy of reality. Okay.
And if I
So-
don't have a worldview in which I have
No.
ultimacy, then I can
Let me-
appeal to one that has ultimacy, even if I don't necessarily subscribe to it.
No, you're not.
I
You're still-
understand you're scared of hypothetical.
I'm not trying. No, I'm not scared of what you're saying. Okay. I'm telling you to your face. Okay.
Okay.
You're not understanding it, but I'm more than willing to go over it with you again. Okay.
Yeah,
That is correct.
sure.
Rationality is fucked
Okay,
when it
Tom.
comes to this.
Tom, listen. When you or I speak,
Circles.
whatever it is, whenever you and I make an assertion, if we make a predication, the metaphysical intelligibility of that statement, not the semantic intelligibility, the metaphysical intelligibility will be in virtue of the ultimacy of reality or model of reality from which it is derived. Okay, do you understand that so far?
Yes.
Okay, do you accept that or not?
Let me just rephrase some understanding. The meaning of a statement you make is interpreted within
No.
your own worldview.
Meaning would have to do with semantics. I'm talking about that something is intelligible is that it can be accounted for in terms of the ultimacy that it is specific and derived from.
Yes.
Okay, do you agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. So we're on the same page now. So when we talk about your model of reality and my model of reality, let's designate them as letters of the alphabet so we're clear. Okay. So let's say that you hold to worldview T and I hold to worldview Z. The only possibilities or hypotheticals that I can invoke, all right,
Yes.
are those that are specific to my model of reality.
Okay. So
Because-
you can't use my own worldview against me.
No, I can discuss your worldview conceptually, but I
Then why
cannot.
can't-
But I cannot, from my worldview of worldview Z, whatever that is, I cannot invoke your worldview of T or worldview Q as a possibility, because a worldview is not a contingency. A worldview is an ultimacy of reality upon which all possibilities depend.
Well,
The
okay.
mistake
it-
that people make is they're thinking of worldviews, which are all encompassing, as though they were contingent situations. That's a mistake
Okay.
of reasoning.
Well, in your case, I don't have a worldview.
Okay, well you actually do. You just may not be clear on it. For
I
example,
have an incredibly simplistic worldview. I have
Tom, you're an intelligent adult, right? Now, if I sat down with a 7-year-old child, okay, if I said to a 7-year-old child, "What is your worldview?" They're going to go, "I don't know what you're talking about." Okay. Now, if I said to the child, Now, when you go play out in the playground, is that
Oh,
real?
hold on.
Is that
Yeah.
real,
Yeah.
or is that a dream that you're having?
Would you like me to explain my worldview, Mr. Dawkins?
Well, you
Or
how? Well,
it's
wait a
very
minute.
limited one.
Sure, but you
It's
told me. Well, yeah,
incredibly-
sure, I would.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I would like you to explain it, but you just told me you don't have a worldview.
Well, it's incredibly limited in its scope. Most of
Oh,
what I
so
believe
you do
is,
have a worldview? Is that it?
what I believe is, so if you
Well, wait, I
define
asked
a
you a
world
question, sir. Now
under
listen.
your yes,
listen.
I'm
I'll shut up in a
answering the
second.
question.
I'll shut up in a second. I promise you. You and I have butted heads before, and I'm willing
Yes.
to forget all of that. But when I ask
Okay.
you a simple and fair question, okay, I would like you not only just to respond, I'd like you to answer that question. Okay.
I was in the process of answering that question. If you'd
Oh,
let me finish
okay.
speaking.
Okay. So did you say that you don't have a worldview?
Yes, and I was wrong because my worldview.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Under your so your definition of worldview is an ultimacy of reality, and I think there is, well, within my view, there is only one ultimacy of reality, and that is it exists in some form. After that, it's all contingent statements based on variables, essentially. So
All right,
the ultimacy of
I
the
have to take an
ultimacy of my
important phone call. I have to take an important phone call. I'll be back in 4 minutes. Okay.
okay.
All right. Sorry. I apologize. I'm not trying to blow you off.
No problem. For anyone else in the room interested, I adopt the Cartesian view. So the only
Oh,
thing
wait,
that
wait,
I
wait,
can
time out.
yeah.
What was I didn't hear you? What was the name of the view?
Cartesian.
Descartes.
Thank
So
you.
what's that mean?
I think therefore
He's a
I
French
am.
guy.
You
Yeah.
think, therefore you are.
Yeah.
Do
So what's that
video-
mean as a worldview?
In-
What,
in
what
Do
kind
video.
of
It
assumptions?
means.
Okay.
It means
In order
do video. Sorry.
well,
Tom, I didn't-
in order for me to perceive at all, whether that perception is intelligible, whether it is accurate, something must necessarily exist, whether or not, even if my logic is flawed, that is self-evident.
What is existent under your worldview? What is
I don't know.
existence?
His,
I
his
What do you
existence in and of
mean?
itself is his worldview.
This is the problem. You see, if you
No,
don't know,
no,
You
then
don't
your
have-
whole worldview collapses,
on.
dude.
No, it doesn't
Taste
matter.
like-
It doesn't matter if he knows or
Taste-
not, because
It doesn't
he's
matter.
talking to you right now.
Doesn't matter
according to
anything
him.
you say.
Okay, let's
you
calm
say,
it
I don't
down.
know.
Alright,
It doesn't.
hold on.
It literally
Hold on.
doesn't matter.
It
What
takes care of
So-
itself.
So this
Yeah.
is what Tom is saying. Tom's worldview is built around debito, cogito, ergo sum, right? Which means
Oh,
I
fuck.
do, therefore
Wait, are we
I
talking
think,
about fucking
therefore I
Dragon
am.
Ball Z?
So when Tom asserts his ultimacy, he is saying, I think, therefore I am, which means that he is stating that the only thing that we can truly big K know is that we exist. Absent that, the entire universe could be simply a hologram of a Cartesian demon.
That'd be
That
so.
is just
Okay, the true I use Cartesian view, but Descartes was a bit of a nutcase, and that if you interpret demons in the way I believe he was interpreting them, then it implies other intelligences. But
Yeah, scary things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
I mean,
Well,
it doesn't
scary bad
necessarily
thing.
mean demons. It just means that
Yeah.
there's some sort of
Yeah.
Can we call
force
them demons, though?
preventing.
Can we call them
the
demons?
the
Mr. Bond?
modern philosophical term for the Cartesian demon argument is the brain in the vat.
Yes.
Oh, fuck that. They had that in Star Wars. Nope.
So basically, right, Tom is asserting that the entire universe could be completely logically incoherent, that up could be down, 2 + 2 could be 7, and none of that matters because the only thing that we can actually know is that in order for us to even have the ability to rationalize, we must exist. So for instance, with the Cartesian demon, right? So when Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, he is saying that in order for the Cartesian demon to lie to me about the world, I must exist. So at its most basic fundamental starting point,
Mm.
your existence is not in question. And this is the basic for the foundational axiomatic leg of the Munchausen trilemma.
The what?
Yes.
Say that again. The who trilemma?
This is the basic axiomatic foundational leg of the Munchausen's trilemma. So
Oh,
you have
German guy.
three three ways to justify in epistemology knowledge. You have the coherentist worldview, which is what Dawkins argues for. You have the infinite regress argument, which Alvin Plantinga takes, and you have the axiomatic worldview, which is constructed by René Descartes, which says that at its most basic, we have a properly basic belief that we exist, and then from there we move to attempt to justify knowledge. The issue is that none of these three legs of the trilemma have any ability to have supremacy over the other justification. So it comes down to, as I said in the other room, when you attempt to justify God, in as much as you are saying that I am following a coherentist model where my views are justified by the fact that they are coherent with all my other worldviews, you have no supremacy over the axiomatic foundational argument who says that I argue from a fundamental primary basic belief. So then the only option that you are left with is to simply say that I base my worldview on the faith that I have in Jesus Christ. And when you make that argument, which is the only thing that the Christian can truly say, which is that I have faith in this, you no longer possess the ability to attempt to justify anything. And you can no longer say that someone presupposes the Christian worldview in order to make their arguments. The other thing that I noticed...
Huh?
The other thing that I noticed in this argument is Darth was telling Tom that it was impossible for Tom to make an internal critique of the Christian worldview because he is not a Christian, which is absolutely false. He can make both external and internal critiques that are completely valid.
Yeah, he's incredibly scared of the problem of easy knowledge, and he does his best to kind of tiptoe around it. And as soon as you bring it up, he goes into that whole semantic spiel about how you can't actually use a hypothet.
Well, notice.
I don't think it's scary.
Notice that he said that he was quoting William Lane Craig, who had a PhD, but then he just completely dismissed the fact that Zoj has an epistemological PhD.
I don't
right?
have it
So-
yet,
so-
to be clear.
Well,
Jesus didn't have a
we-
PhD. He believes in that.
for this we're going to assert that you're close enough, Zoj, right?
How close to you?
But that,
How close?
that's
You have
the
the fucking
point.
I admire your faith.
How close are you?
Thank you. But right, like that's what it comes down to, right? So like Big Chum Time right here is a foundationalist. He's pretty good at telling you what the foundational is, right? But at the end of the day, even his foundationalism is based on faith in his primary basic belief, right? And when you go to the coherentist worldview, you are stuck, especially in the covenantal apologetical argument, which is the new term for the tag argument. You are stuck with attempting to wiggle your way out of a very basic Euthyphro dilemma. And simply by claiming that Euthyphro is a false dilemma is not a proper response, because basically all you're saying is, I don't want to take the time to deal with Euthyphro. I'm not going to bother with it. So I'm just going to say that it's false without giving any justification as to why it's false. Because at the end of the day, you have to answer the following question. Is logic contingent on God, or is God contingent on logic? And if God is contingent on logic, then logic is not absolute, and you can no longer use that to justify your knowledge. But if God is contingent on logic, then God's primacy is no longer supreme.
Well, this actually assumes that we can understand the full extent to the logic, quote unquote, as we call it, that God can wield.
Yeah.
Like we can't fully comprehend and understand gravity at like perfectly yet, right?
Well, we're almost there.
We're getting there, though.
We're so close.
But who's to say that you couldn't say the same thing about God eventually, right? He's so complex, he's so far out of our reach currently that the things that govern what he can and cannot do, if he can and cannot do anything at all, would be so complex that we have to take us a while to get there. Maybe one day we will.
But
that's the epistemological equivalent of like, I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really good
Yeah.
too, because most people are like, nah.
So now here's the thing, right? But think about what you just said, right? Because we understand what logic is. Logic is not difficult, right? Especially
Ask
the
women
three
that.
basic laws, right? Well, me and Zoj would say that, that
Yeah,
we borrow
charming.
from that, right? But right. So here's what you've got, right? You've got logic, the law of identity, A equals A, right?
Sure.
So That's fairly easy to understand. The law of excluded middle is fairly easy to understand. The law of
And
contradiction
they're
is
all
fairly easy to
utterly
understand, right?
unprovable. They're all completely
Now-
unprovable.
Yeah.
By the way.
Now, logic, here's the thing, right? Logic presupposes the necessity of logic.
Yep.
All right? Which
course it
is
does.
the same thing when the presuppositional person says, I presuppose God, right?
Yep.
But does God presuppose God? Okay, that's the next question. And then finally, you get to the fact that you understand, again, who is contingent on who? Because if God is God, God cannot contradict himself. But if
Yes, he can.
logic is
He's God.
independent,
Isn't that part
no,
of the
he
thing?
can't.
But he can.
No,
He's
because
God. How do you know that he's God?
no, he literally cannot. No, God
He said he can do
literally
anything.
can.
Doesn't that mean he can
he-
exist in like a quantum state of both
That
contradicting
is-
and non-contradicting himself?
that
Something
is-
stupid like that? Huh?
That
that
is such a
to
cop out.
I know, but it's
Yeah,
a good
that-
one. It's a fucking
but
good one.
no, listen, it's not a cop out because it is a basic misunderstanding of omnipotence. All right. Now, Thomas Aquinas did a great job of answering the omnipotence dilemma. God can only, and again, this goes back to one thing being contingent on another, right? God can only act within the bounds of his own nature. So when we
have to
say
understand
God,
his entire nature to be able to say that, though, right? Like we have to get the
no,
scope of his
we
nature.
we
first.
don't. We don't have to know the entirety to understand parts, okay? And we can know that parts are true regardless of whether we know the entirety. Like build a puzzle, right? You know that even if you don't complete the puzzle, you know that certain pieces are end pieces and certain pieces are middle pieces.
You might.
know that.
I'm really bad at puzzles. I
You
might-
know
I might
how a
be
wheel
confused.
works. You don't have to know how a car works.
Exactly.
Sure.
That's a great.
Sure.
All right.
I
So
like that one better.
God, right, must operate within the confines of his own nature. So
Isn't
if
that
God
true
were
of all
to,
things, Kathleen?
yes, that is true of all things, right?
Why
And
bother
it
saying
applies to
What
God.
information did that add?
Because it
It's
added to
it's
the
a fundamental argument of whether God can exist in the
It's
in the
not
form
an
of.
argument. What did it add?
Okay, well, Ben, you know,
It's true of
I
all
don't
Can God make a
understand.
rock so big he can't lift it because he can do anything? It's a gotcha. It's explaining a
No,
gotcha.
no. Listen. No,
No,
the
when
reason
Kathleen
that
says God can only act within his bounds of his nature, that doesn't add anything. That doesn't mean anything.
you know what? Instead of interrupting halfway through a point, you know, why don't you let me finish the point, and then maybe you'd get an
You don't need to
aha
finish it
moment,
because it's useless.
right?
Oof.
It's only useless to
You agree. You agree that it's useless.
No, I don't agree that it's
It's an
useless.
argument.
Now
then
I'm going to
explain how
finish
it
my
tells us
point.
anything.
Now I'm going to finish my point. So if God must operate within inside his bounds, right?
As does
When God
everything.
makes certain promises to us, right? For instance, that if we believe in Christ, we will receive salvation.
That's only one
If
promise. That's only one
God,
kind of God, though.
if God can contradict himself, then why in the world would I trust that the promises that he makes to me are believable? If God can just contradict himself and turn up into down whenever he wants, why would I believe him when he says that I will go to heaven? I have no
That's the point of
reason
faith, right?
whatsoever, right? That's the difference between when we use big G God, right? That is the difference between what we say big G God and super powerful alien dude, right?
Or the Christian
So-
version of God versus like the Islamic version, which states that Allah, however he feels when you get up to heaven, no matter what, he can fundamentally just arbitrarily send you wherever he wants, back down to hell with you.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
true of every fundamental framework of a God, or that's just the
So
Christian one.
one of the reasons that Christianity asserts its primacy is because the Christian worldview, regardless of whether you believe in it or not, is a perfectly coherent system. Every belief in Christianity is coherent with all other beliefs. If one of those beliefs contradicts it, then the Christian worldview is absurd and incoherent.
No, then they burn you at the stake for arguing with them. At least that's what they did for the most part. You can't really argue with that.
Yeah,
Well,
When they prune
Well,
you from the gene pool, arguing is
I
Matt
think if
burn
That's a
side.
but Stalin killed millions take. It's not helpful.
No,
I
what I'm
mean,
saying
it really is just
ultimately
historically nonsense. I mean, even the Spanish Inquisition, what was it, 500 over 5 centuries, they killed like 1,000 people, and like it's made out to be this giant thing, but it's like
They
one
tortured
fucking day of the
1,000
Soviet.
people to death, man. That's a lot. Even if it did take that long, because the way they did it was fucking sadistic. Sadistic as a motherfucker.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but even if the Spanish Inquisition had killed and tortured only one person, it would have still been wrong.
But
Oh,
that's not the point,
no,
man.
you
The
can't. You
point
can't
is
morally
relative.
say that it's
The
wrong
point-
or right, though, right? Because like, that's an authoritative.
The point is relative. If we're, someone's just bringing up Stalin or whatever, but like one day of Soviet atrocities is greater than all the fucking shit the Spanish Inquisition did in 5 centuries. That's my point there. It's it has been. By the way, I'm not a Catholic, but the Spanish Inquisition has been drummed so fucking hard in the West because the West, mostly with Britain and Britain's colonies, have of course been Protestant, and so there's been a lot of propaganda against the Catholic
So,
Spanish, and so that's why.
I would argue that the Christian Church, the Catholic Church, is ignoring the Holocaust is much more damning than the Spanish Inquisition.
And let's not forget all the bloodshed of the Reconquista.
Which Reconquista?
Yeah, the bloodshed.
I mean, the entire world is built on bloodshed, right? I mean, the redeeming quality of Christianity is that Jesus Christ came down to be beaten into a living pulp and then nailed to a tree and bled to death. Right? That's the fundamental foundation of the Christian faith, is that Christ took mortal form in order to be subjected to the most heinous punishments possible at the time and then be nailed to a cross. So the whole
Amen,
world
brother.
is built on blood sacrifice.
And
I
because of that
do
sacrifice, you get to live today.
I do believe in God. I do believe in the Trinity and Christ and salvation and the apostolic creeds. Having said that, I also understand that my ability to assert my faith as being completely correct relies solely on my faith, no matter how many epistemological arguments I make to the contrary. The only way to truly prove the existence of God is to make an ontological argument, and there is no ontological argument that can be made that can prove the existence of God, because in order to make an ontological argument valid, you must make empirical proofs.
Which are, of course, impossible.
Yes. Unless, of course, the Book of Revelations is true, and then, eventually Jesus will come back.
At that point, I would just that would be a conversion scenario.
The problem with that is that I believe that the Book of Revelation has already occurred. So I think.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Hang on, when was the temple built then?
Let me find the exact word for it.
I feel like you're wrong about that. I feel like we are in the end times. The Book of Revelation just hasn't occurred yet.
Oh, everyone.
I'm back.
yeah,
You should know you're talking to somebody who
full
goes on
preterism.
cam, sticking things up their rectum to perform for people.
Hey ho! Hey
You know
ho!
that song?
How do you know that?
Because he's watching.
According to other eyewitnesses on Discord, Tanner does sexual performances on cam and has been doing so for several years.
No, the
why is
reason.
that relevant?
Yeah. See, it's not relevant, but he knows he can't defeat me in an argument, so that's why he brings that shit up to completely derail the
Dawkins,
conversation.
you have brought so many accusations in here in the past about people trying to libel you, and yet here you are doing the exact same thing. This smacks of hypocrisy.
Well, yeah, but then again, hypocrisy would be him telling you not to use circular arguments while he is using circular arguments. I mean, we had an evidence of that today. So, by the way, the reason he knows that is because he has watched it, not because of other people telling him.
That is a lie.
And if you don't believe me, I have a video of him where he says, I'm going to click on this and watch this and see what happens.
That's a lie.
So as he would say,
Oh,
I
that's
have
not fighting
this is why I
forensic
said,
evidence.
Norm, okay, now what we have is this person is not only deceived about their maleness, they're willing just to lie against a Christian while professing to be themselves to be Christian while performing sex acts.
Oh, I don't lie about you.
Lying. See, this is the mental derangement. See, what we have here is a very fundamental violation of the social contract. That when we basically communicate to one another, we'll be truthful and honest.
All right, now, in this video that I am about to post, towards the end, about 22 minutes into it, Darth makes the following claim. Have you ever been on such and such a website? Because this looks exactly like you and blah, 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 blah. I know what I'll do. I'm just going to click on this video and see what happens.
No, that's not what I said.
So, let's see here. There you go. Watch it as you will. Watch it as you. By the way, this is also the same video where I completely destroyed his ability to make any biblical argument for why transgenderism is a sin. I posted it in general chat. If you watch the whole video, you will watch.
Yeah, no,
I'll post it. I'll post it in religion. Yeah, I'll post it in religion. By the way, this is the same video. If you watch the entire thing, where I meticulously take apart Darth's attempt at arguing that transgenderism is a sin under God.
So are you
more lies. I was given a link by Tom R. A link that posted the text about the last appearances. I didn't say I would click on any video and watch this pervert stick God knows what up his rectum while professing to be a born-again Christian and then regularly going on cam. And this is bizarro world.
Well, at the same time,
it's so pathetic.
I don't think Kathleen is a sodomite, and moreover, if you believe that Kathleen is still a man, then he is married to a wife and does not engage in homosexuality.
Did I mention homosexuality?
Well, you said sticking things up your ass, which is sodomy.
This guy who imagines that he's a woman, who's delusional about that, he just lied that saying that I would click on a video, which I never did. Somebody gave me a link where there was a text window indicating the last time that he had done his sexual performance while maintaining he's a born-again Christian and a servant of Jesus Christ while performing sex acts.
Okay.
Well, the problem I have with this is that any kind of such anal sex act is no more sodomy than someone getting a blowjob, which most Christian men that have been open about their personal relations.
That's not really what we're talking about.
Well, that's what sodomy is. You're accusing of sodomy. I'm just pointing out what sodomy actually is.
That's not really the topic.
The other thing.
We can shift now that it's gone against your way. We can shift the topic back. Yeah.
Tim, somebody else mentioned sodomy. I didn't mention sodomy, so there's no shift to the topic. Okay.
You were just talking about sodomy. I just clarified what sodomy actually is.
Okay, I didn't. It
doesn't matter. We know what
I didn't mention sodomy. The bottom line here is we have somebody who has a mental disturbance about what sex they are, and that they're willing to lie and saying, "Oh, I'm a Bible-believing Christian now, and I have been now for several months," while the whole time performing sex acts for money. Okay, and then is lying, saying that I would click on a video, which I did not say I was.
What about repentance, Mr. Dawkins? What about repentance?
Yeah, well, that's that. Yeah, okay. That was an issue that was brought forth, like with John the Baptist and Jesus, and they said about the Pharisees, bring forth fruits in keeping with the supposed repentance.
Mm-hmm. Well, if he's repented,
if somebody after they're professing to become a born-again Christian where they have escaped damnation in hell, okay, and they're openly and publicly performing sex acts and doing it for money as recently as a week or two ago. I mean, this is not fruits in keeping with the profession of repentance.
All right. So That's still not a. That's an argument against Kathleen Tanner. That's not an argument against transgenderism in the Bible.
Anyway, I don't want to
So
talk about these
here's
transvestites.
the
So
issue.
we were talking earlier.
Here's the issue with what Darth is saying, right? Is that Darth is arguing
You're over
that other
talking me.
people's
You're over talking.
sins are worse than himself.
When I had left before, okay. The topic at hand. We were talking about epistemology and ontology. Okay. Now, outside of the Christian worldview, is it your view that you can establish a theory of knowledge in your ontology?
Well, it depends what you define as knowledge. And if you're going to use,
I didn't say knowledge.
You did.
I said ontology.
Oh, I must have. You did say theory of knowledge, didn't you?
I said theory of knowledge. I didn't mention knowledge per se. I said epistemology.
Okay. So to basically outline my my worldview, it's the Cartesian worldview, and the only thing I can hold as an absolute truth, as an ultimacy, is the fact that there must be existence at some level. Because I can perceive and I can reason. Whether or not my perception or reasoning is accurate
here's the problem.
Is inconsequential. Wait, let me finish.
What does existence
let me finish.
mean?
Let me finish.
What is that?
It doesn't matter.
No,
there must be something that is.
No. Go ahead and finish.
There must be something that is. Okay. As I was going on, my worldview continues from there. Under the assumptions that my who's doing that? It's fucking annoying. Anyway,
so my computer had a scene.
What is existence?
Oh, okay. Do you not know the definition of existence?
Yeah, tell me what exists.
Something is.
What does that mean? What is something?
Something does not need to be defined within my worldview. The mere fact.
Okay, you're giving me gobbledygook now. I mean, this is
no. It's a brain and the vat argument. It's a Cartesian argument. It's extremely well outlined.
Okay.
Something must exist in order for mind to.
You're not understanding the issue when we talk about an ultimacy. Okay.
What am I not understanding?
The ultimacy of reality is that which necessarily exists, upon which all contingent states of affairs are specific to and derivative of. Just saying that something exists doesn't establish the ultimacy which is the ground for a contingency. So
if you're using ultimacy in that way, then I don't have an ultimacy.
Okay, good. Then if you don't have an ultimacy, you have no basis to make any stipulation.
I make stipulations within parameters and maintain radical doubt about that parameter's viability.
You can verbalize stipulation.
Valid parameter.
Doobie, can I talk to you for a second, please?
Okay, you can verbalize stipulations, but they're just simply arbitrary. There's nothing to ground them whatsoever.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, good. Then it's game over. Then you're just saying this is true because the moon is green cheese, or this is
no. Hold on. No. Don't try and pull that trick again.
That's a stipulation without basis.
The stipulation that I follow. So let's follow. Let's assume that logic exists, that I can use logic accurately, and that my sense perception is accurate enough to give me a more or less, let's say, 85% accurate version of reality.
Are these contingencies?
From there, no, those are the assumptions from which the contingencies follow.
No, you're not understanding. Okay.
What am I not understanding?
When you make a stipulation of an event or an entity, that event or entity will either be ultimate or it will be a contingency. Okay.
No, it can be doubted.
Tom, listen to me.
It can be a doubted premise, as I just said.
Tom, listen to me. You need to stop with the argumentative MO that you've had before. You don't understand the point I'm making. I'll be glad to go over it again with you. Okay.
I understand. Trust me.
If you invoke D, if you invoke A, okay, in virtue of D, okay, and you say, well, D is my ultimacy because A is dependent on B, B is dependent on C, and C is dependent on D. Okay.
Yeah, infinite regress.
Now, if D depends upon something else, then it's not all. It's a contingency. Now, what
I know, and
okay, good. So, what is the ultimacy of reality, which grounds all contingent situations that determines what is and cannot be?
I don't believe there is one.
Okay, then you lose your ability to make non-arbitrary stipulations. What that
Yes,
means
I
is,
understand.
good. What
I
that
understand
means
that.
is, I'd like to finish, please. What that just simply being verbose and talkative is not a rebuttal. Now, what simply means is therefore any predication that you make about a state of affairs is just simply arbitrary.
Yes, the laws of logic are themselves arbitrary. You can't prove the law of identity.
Okay, you're not understanding that. Okay,
I'm fully understanding.
Listen,
he keeps posturing.
Every statement you make, anything that comes out of your mouth, will therefore be arbitrary.
Yes, yes.
Okay, now do you understand what that does to your ability to converse?
Well, it does nothing because you accept roughly the same parameters that I do. You accept
okay,
that
no, I don't. And number two, that stipulation you just made, it's arbitrary.
Hold on. Do you accept that the laws of logic exist?
Okay, Tom.
Do you accept that the laws of logic exist?
Tom,
yes or no, Mr. Batman?
Sorry to
Do you
cut in
accept?
here, but
Okay,
just
Tom,
to mention that
what
debate
you
night
just
is now
conceded
starting in
that
the
everything
other
that you say is
so
Go ahead, Soj.
Can I say
Yeah.
something real fast?
no.
No, Danny.
So
sorry.
just to mention,
why
debate
am my
night,
server muted?
Ural debate night is just about to start in the politics channel. We invite
Yeah.
anyone interested to head on over.
Yes.
To know why I was server muted.
Because you were interrupting Zoj when she was making an announcement, dude.
Oh, I had Zode turned down because Zode was being obnoxious.
Then you
in the
shouldn't
other
fucking
room.
do that.
Okay, no, I did do it because Zog was constantly over talking me in the other room, and I left the room to come down here so I wouldn't be over talked by Zog. That's why I did it. Because Zog was abusing.
Let's keep it on topic.
Okay,
Let's
yeah.
keep it on
Stay
topic.
on fucking topic.
So, yeah, I am staying on topic.
She was
Now,
making an announcement. You interrupted her because you had to turn down.
Yeah, I
Just
turned
get
it
back
down.
to your fucking point.
Yeah, I turned him down because he was being abusive in the other room. That's why I left. Now, Tim, if you're going to continue the same type of abuse going to me, I'll have a little talk.
Dude, just go ahead and fucking get back to your point. Quit your whining, dude.
I'm not whining. I'm simply standing against what I consider your abusiveness. Now, okay, if you want to pull the same crap you did last time, I'll have a little talk with Doobie about your previous behavior.
I don't think you'll be on the right side. Actually,
Tom, what the point is simply this is, just fast talking is not a rebuttal. Ignoring what I'm saying.
I agree completely.
Now, please don't overtalk me. Now, if you concede that everything that you say is arbitrary, okay, then for you to say, well, the same is true of you, that's an arbitrary statement as well.
You accept the parameter. You accept my arbitrary parameters within your worldview, so they hold tight for you.
Okay, you listen. Either you're not understanding this, or you're.
No,
may I think, Tom? Would you stop over talk? Look, Tom. Do you want to continue to talk with me now and in the future?
I'll stop over talking you.
Do you want to continue? Do you want to continue talking with me now in the future? Because if you do, it would behoove you to stop your previous behavior where you're constantly over talking me.
All right.
And your argumentativeness. I don't mind you debating with me, but you're just simply being argumentative. Now,
it's the nature of debate.
Once you concede that everything that you assert is arbitrary, to make any further arbitration or any other statement, it doesn't matter what the content it is, then it's arbitrary. There's no reason for me to conform my thinking whatsoever to arbitrary statements.
You agree with the same arbitrary principles in your own worldview. They're included in yours.
Okay. Is that statement arbitrary?
Is that statement accurate? Do you believe in the law of logic?
Okay, I hold to the existence of the Christian God who has constructed a world which reflects and conforms to his mind, which reflect the laws of logic. Now,
okay, so I can make a logical statement and you'll accept it.
Is that an arbitrary statement?
It is in my worldview. It isn't in yours.
Okay.
So
okay. Is that arbitrary?
No.
No?
Not within your worldview. Within my worldview, it is.
No. I'm saying anything that comes out of your mouth, is it that arbitrary?
Everything is arbitrary within my worldview, except the nature of existence.
So that statement is arbitrary?
Yes, but not according to you, because you operate on the law of logic.
Then there's no reason. For me to pay attention to somebody who just makes arbitrary statements.
That statement is born of the law of logic, on which you agree in its absoluteness and its existence. Do you not?
Is that stipulation you just gave me arbitrary?
Answer the question. Do you believe that the law of logic?
Yeah, that question contained a premise. Is the premise within your question arbitrary?
Within my worldview, it is. Within your worldview, it is not.
Okay, it doesn't. Well, is what you just said right there? Is that arbitrary?
Tell me, do you believe the law of logic exists?
If you make
Look,
it,
I understand you have fun.
Right now. I'm talking right now. Okay, listen. I'm going to tell you right now. If you persist in being argumentative, obnoxious, I won't talk with you again in the future. So you better change your MO if you want to talk with me. Now,
I'm shaking.
The point. It's not for the purpose of shaking you. It's to let you know where I draw a line in the sand. It's not intended to intimidate you. I'm just saying, if you desire to speak with me now in the future, then you need to conform your behavior to a certain civil level.
Fantastic.
Now,
thank you.
Good. Now, once you say everything that you say is arbitrary, even if you form a question to me, you give me an interrogative, there are stipulations that are premises within questions. So with the premises, even within the questions, then are therefore arbitrary. So if everything you say is arbitrary, it's just game is over, because you could say anything, or you could say, well, Darth Dawkins, you're right, because the moon has green cheese inside. Or you could say, Darth Dawkins, you're wrong, because the moon has green cheese. Those are just both arbitrary statements. It's game over.
Here, let me explain my entire sequence of logic here. So I have my arbitrary axiom, which is the arbitrary axioms, my sense perceptions are accurate, and I have the laws of logic. From those arbitrary perceptions, I can then infer, using those axioms, the rest of my argument. And if you agree with those axioms, you necessarily must at least acknowledge my argument.
Is what you just said arbitrary?
Doesn't matter.
Are you going to address the point, or are you just going to keep on asking?
No, I am addressing the point, because you're conceding the foundation of everything you say depends on our arbitrary starting points.
Yeah.
He's not going to do it, Tom.
Therefore,
I know, it's frustrating.
Any ideas that you build on one another, they're ultimately arbitrary.
I agree.
Good. Game over.
Game over!
It's not important whether they're arbitrary in my worldview. It's important whether they're arbitrary in your worldview, because according to you, the premise that I base it on is not arbitrary. So they're not arbitrary to you. And you yourself, you can't wear the veil of a different worldview, as you're currently trying to do.
Yeah, when you say that I can't, is that an arbitrary declaration?
Did Tom just internally critique Darth Dawkins' worldview into game over?
Is that an arbitrary declaration?
Yes, it is, but not to you. To me, it is.
Okay. Well, no, just saying to me, to you, it is, but not to me. That's an arbitrary declaration by your own words.
Well, you don't have an argument, so you need to call everything arbitrary.
No. Okay, you see, this is why you're looking profoundly foolish, even amongst skeptics here. Yeah, you are. You're just in denial, and you're trying to save face. You see, all you're simply doing.
No, that's arbitrary.
All you're simply doing right now is simply being argumentative. Once you concede that everything you say is arbitrary, it's not grounded in anything.
It's not arbitrary within your worldview, Mr. Batman. It's grounded in the eternal universal laws of logic.
First of all,
which you accept.
That's an arbitrary
my bad.
That's an arbitrary declaration.
Not to you, it isn't. Do you believe that absolute truth exists and absolute truth can be inferred from the laws of logic?
Are you so effing intellectually dishonest in this room in front of everybody when you say it's not arbitrary to you? You're not understanding this. You have conceded, and I will keep on repeating this. I will keep on reminding you, because you want to admit that everything you say is arbitrary, but then move on as though any of your statements were not arbitrary. When you say, but they're not arbitrary to you, The fact of the matter is, you saying that, according to your own concession, is arbitrary. You cannot, once you say everything that I, Tom Dynamic, say is arbitrary from here on out, anything you say is arbitrary.
Okay.
This is exactly the same as Batman's. How do you know? How do you know? It's ridiculous.
You use the premise of logic to create your arguments. You hold that premise is eternal and constant, etc. That it is an ultimacy, or well, it's not an ultimacy, but it's an ultimate truth in your worldview. I hold that premise is simply a baseless assertion, one that I can invoke because you believe it in an argument against you. So you either have to say that you believe the laws of logic are arbitrary within your own worldview, which would completely destroy it, or you have to acknowledge my question. It's an either or. You can't go either way. And you can't just repeat, is that arbitrary? Because it really just makes you look kind of scared. So can you, well, actually, no, you're just going to go down the epistemological route of God. I've forgotten what the actual question is because I've been asked how many times things are arbitrary.
That's the
So
problem, dude,
frustrating.
because your thought process is arbitrary. That's the problem.
Oh, no.
You got it. It's fucking random.
Oh, no. I've been found out.
Yeah, there's no point in carrying on the conversation. With,
You can keep doing it though. It's funny.
Yeah, well, it's, what he's doing is he doesn't even believe this crap. Okay.
No, I believe it. I don't hold it as an absolute truth.
Okay. Is your statement that you believe it arbitrary?
Well, yes, because belief is in itself arbitrary, and I believe that my axioms are functionally true.
Yeah. Is that statement arbitrary?
Absolutely true.
Yeah. By the way, Tim, if you can hear me, please stop messaging me about this bullshit. Okay. I've gotten your text message. Take it up with Doobie. Okay.
Did anyone remember my original question, or is Darth Dawkins just that good at
There's no point.
things?
Listen. As far as I'm concerned, the conversation, Tom, between you and me is over because you're over talking me. Any conversation further now or in the near future, it is simply pointless. You have conceded everything you say is arbitrary. So there's no point in me listening to arbitrariness.
Okay. But it's not arbitrary within your worldview, which I've repeated and you've refused to acknowledge.
That's an arbitrary statement.
You can't invoke a worldview you don't hold, can you?
Yeah. You see, this
You're invoking my worldview in an argument against me.
You see, I can't imagine that you're so stupid that you don't understand how utterly self-refuting you are. So since I don't think that you're stupid, and I actually think that you have a decent level of ability of discursive reasoning and IQ, then the only thing that I can conclude is just that you're just in full bullshit mode. Okay, because once you admit one more time, once you admit that everything you say is arbitrary, it's game over. Then your statements make no more sense than a drunk, flu-bitten Down syndrome kid who's telling us about the nature of reality.
It's only game over if you believe my premises are arbitrary.
Is that an arbitrary statement?
Gosh.
Well, do you believe that my premises are arbitrary?
Tom. Now, I'll tell you this. If in the future you have a change of mind that all of your predications don't ultimately derive and are specific to arbitrariness, if you change your mind on that, I'll be glad to converse with you. But there's no point in responding to you any further about anything you say as long as you maintain. Please don't overtalk me.
Okay.
As long as you are committed that everything you say is specific to and derivative of absolute arbitrariness, there's no point in you speaking to me, because you might as well sing me a song from the Bee Gees as a form of rebuttal or response.
Okay. Well, in that case, would you like to justify the laws of logic to me without invoking logic?
Tom, one more time. Look, I'll say it one more time. Listen, one more time. Okay. When you change your mind that anything and everything you say ultimately is specific to arbitrariness, which you have conceded to. I have not put words in your mouth. You have
Yes.
admitted that everything you say stems from pure arbitrariness, and that it
Yes.
depends on arbitrariness. When you
Yes.
change your, if and when you change your mind under that, then feel free to want to converse or even debate with me. Until you do so, I won't be responding to one who says everything they believe and state is arbitrary.
Well, would you like to prove me wrong there?
Okay.
Would you like to prove the laws of logic are not arbitrary?
Okay. Did you hear what I just said?
Yes, and I'm
Okay,
giving you an
did-
opportunity to
Did
change
you
my mind.
did you change your mind that everything you say is ultimately arbitrary?
I'm in the process of. I'm not sure if I should or not. So I'm giving you the
Tom,
opportunity to
one
do
more
that.
time. See, now you're demonstrating to me.
Darth,
that
let him
you're
go, man. You
growing.
just interrupted him. Let him go.
Okay. Now what you're telling me is that
Stop over talking
yeah,
him.
Okay, Tom.
Tom, go ahead and finish your
Yes.
statement, and Darth, follow up right after, man. Come on.
So now that I have an opportunity to speak more than a couple words in a row before being interrupted, Darth's problem.
You're such a fucking
Here
troll.
we go.
Stop interrupting.
The Darth's problem.
I'm gonna go to a room. This is turned
Okay.
in. This is
Bye,
turning into
Darth.
troll.
Have a
This
great
room-
day.
Yes,
So-
run while you can, Darth.
So to just let's put a little period mark on this.
Tom, you
Don't
are
do
one
it.
Repent
Don't-
or
do
perish.
Oh God.
Tom, you
No.
are very smart.
Just
Tom,
drag him out.
It wasn't
Sorry,
even
go.
his final form.
Did we just get Baby Bowser? We got Baby Bowser! No!
He wasn't even his final point. Hey, Tom, I thought you did a great job, man. I thought you
I
did a
bring
great job.
truth. I bring knowledge. I am
Well,
Mr. Batman.
I caught on to the little
God,
bit.
Batman,
Well,
you're like
Wasn't
Darth
Batman a
farts.
liar? He didn't tell anybody who he was. He beat a bunch of people up against, like, illegally, by the way. How's that truthful?
So Kathleen, if you'd like to know where that came from, is in a previous conversation earlier today, he said that a person can only argue from within their old view, and I was kind of holding that against him. So if he accepts my premise, which he does necessarily in his worldview accept the law of logic, he has to acknowledge my argument, which he refuses to do.
What you were making
So-
there, very similar to the argument I made against him, where he just started shouting at me, and I think it might
Exactly.
be because I'm a woman.
No, that's
it's-
arbitrary. That's an arbitrary
no,
distinction. I resent that.
So hold on now. Let's just look at the blatant hypocrisies that he committed in the last 30 minutes. One, he held to authority while discrediting authority, right? So he held to the PhD of some theologian while discrediting Zoj's PhD. He said that he could use circular reasoning for
Does Mr. Zote
justification.
know he has a PhD?
While
Does Mr. Zoge actually know that he has a PhD? Because he actually told me he didn't know anything.
While saying that he could not use circular reasoning.
Wait, hold on, Kathleen, stop. Bees, go ahead.
Can we have you up there? We need someone for your question on the fall of the May government or not.
Oh shit. Okay, is that the next question?
Yes.
All right. Is there another mod still in here? Oh yeah, cool. Then.
Yeah, I got it.
Good luck.
Go to a real argument.
Good luck.
Batman, hey, just a heads up, Batman, you can't be interrupting like that. And you gotta let people finish, then go, and we'll do the same thing. People won't let people interrupt you, okay? It just goes both ways. Kathleen, go ahead and finish, and Batman follow up afterwards, okay?
No, you know what? I will give my time to Batman because generally when he speaks, it's just pure entertainment. So take it away, Batman.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, yeah, Mr. Zodge doesn't even know his own gender, so he doesn't know what position he's holding. As a matter of fact, he's admitted often and frequently.
Why do you go back to that every day?
Oh, stop.
Every day you go back to that.
Batman, hey, Zoj isn't even fucking in here. And what, you know the first rule here, civility. Like, you gotta keep it fucking
I think
civil,
Mr. Batman was being very.
Making a personal attack against someone, especially someone who's not even in here. Like, no, don't do that. If you have a point, stick to it, man.
I was sticking to it, sir. I was sticking to the point of being knowledge, and this person gave up knowledge. So how do they know that they have a PhD if they cannot know their own gender?
Why do you sound like Sheldon? Like Bible banger Sheldon.
Because I like to, sir.
He's like,
sir.
He actually is.
Welcome to the greatest
Sheldon's
place on
head
earth,
shape.
sir.
He actually looks like fat old Sheldon. Actually, now that I think about it. I'm sure it's a-
Can Keep it.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
fat.
so-
I'm old, and I'm brain damaged, and I still destroyed your position without even trying.
Okay, so I actually have a question for Mr. Batman, and I am going to ask a mod, right? See, now I do this in every room where Mr. Batman comes in. So I'm going to request the mod, would you be a dear and just make him answer the question and not obfuscate?
No one
Okay.
can make me answer any
So-
question. But I'd be
so-
happy to answer your questions, Mr. Tanner.
Here is the
Mr.
question.
Tanner.
Here is the question, Mr. Batman. Are you ready? Does
Yes,
God
sir.
think?
Yes, sir. Are you ready for
does-
the answer that I'm prepared to give you, sir?
No.
Does
no.
God think in a certain way because it is logical to do so? Or is thinking in a certain way logical because this is the way that God thinks?
Sir, all logic comes from the God of creation, the God of salvation. The reason we can think logically is because these are the attributes of the living God. This is how we can know that these laws are eternal, universal, and unchanging. And it also validates what Scripture says, that you, sir, I, sir, everyone, sir, knows the God of the Bible, this God, the only God that created, because he has shown himself to us in these laws of logic that you are absolutely, necessarily using every moment of every day.
Okay, so two follow-up questions then, Mr. Batman. First question, you are admitting that logic is contingent on God. So by that, and you are also saying that everyone, regardless of whether they say so or not, admits that God is real, which means by that, following logic, everyone has the ability to use logic and be accurate in its use. So, having said that,
No,
how
sir,
is it
that's not what I'm saying.
logical? How is it logical?
That doesn't follow. No,
Batman,
that's not
let
what
him
I'm saying.
finish. Batman, let him finish. He let you.
How is it logical for something to be contingent on a separate entity and still be considered absolute when that entity has the ability to change?
Sir, let me tell you something. That is not what I said. You made up a false position so you could knock it down. Sir, if you need to, please take notes. I'm happy to speak slower. So, sir, let's understand that these are
that
not
possible?
created things. The laws of logic are not creative items. They are attributes of the living God. They are part and parcel of him. They are his attributes, and they are how he has made us know him. Do you understand this?
I just want to know how much 80s wrestling
Okay,
he watches.
Mr. Batman, I want to apologize. I now understand. You are actually arguing for divine simplicity, which is because it invalidates the Trinity. So thank you for admitting, sir, that you hold heretical
No,
beliefs.
sir, not
Appreciate
at all.
that one.
Because again, the Trinity is all, again, it's one God. The Lord our God is one. That has nothing to do with this issue about logic, sir. Logic, sir, always comes from the eternal, universal, and unchanging God of creation. You have to understand, sir, there is no other explanation for these eternal, universal, and unchanging laws without an eternal, universal, and unchanging lawgiver.
That's just a tautology.
Yes, sir, because it's true.
A tautology is just circular
Wouldn't you
and has
agree,
no
sir, that
empirical claim to
that the truth
justification.
is a tautology?
No, sir, I would not.
Oh, well, sir, if it comports to reality, does that make it a tautology?
No, it does not.
So what
Do you
makes
know what
something
a
a
tautology
tautology?
is?
If something is true, does that make it a tautology?
Did we lose Mr. Batman?
I believe so.
No, sir, I
No,
believe
you're
you.
still here.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, I deafened myself. That was rather comical.
sir, if something is true, does that make it a tautology?
No,
What makes something a tautology, sir?
it's circular.
Oh, sir, then I don't have a tautology. I have an
Yes, you
absolute
do.
authority. You have circular thinking. You have a tautology, sir. I do not.
Why do you
do
keep saying
realize-
sir?
Mr.
Yeah,
Batman,
because
you do
again,
realize
when you think of a
Oh,
tautology, sir,
I
circular thinking requires both parties to be a part and parcel in the circular thinking. Let me give you an example. Mr. Tanner here is using his senses to validate his reasoning, and then he's turning right around and using his reasoning to validate his senses. Do you see how both parts and are in that parcel? It's all part of the equation going around in a big circle. That's not the way God works. God is the absolute authority. He dictates what is real and what is true and the laws that come straight from him, and that's it. I either accept it or I don't. That's called the law of excluded middle.
For clarification here, real quick, a tautology is not actually just something circular. It's something. It's where you, in essence, just restate something twice. So, like if I say, A, therefore A, that's a tautology. Like, A.
Yes. But I was just running with his definition.
So
Tom, do you wanna,
the issue.
Do you want to smash Jim in about 3 seconds or not?
You want to?
The issue.
What?
Oh, there's more than one Tom in the room.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few of us.
Hey.
It's a veritable Tom orgy in here.
Jim, should we smash you, or do you want to just run your time out here in about the 3 weeks before they get fed up of you constantly over talking, locally muting people? How do you want to do this, Jim?
Jim? Where's Jim?
Repent or perish, sir. Repent or perish.
So, Jim is Mr. Batman is a guy called Jim, Christian Hillbilly Jim. He's been doing this for years.
Yes,
so
sir.
He knows
Jim
a lot of people around.
Barber, actually, if you want my last name.
Jim,
and if you want my website, it's jimbarber.info. B-A-R-B-E-R. It's like a barbershop. Jimbarber.info if you want to know all about me, sir.
Gabe, no, man, we're not going to do this shit. Like, Batman's open.
Yes, he's a troll. He follows me around.
Batman.
He's a little stalker.
Okay, we can do this. Yeah. If Batman wants to dox himself, he can do that. If you're going to do that with anyone else here, you're going to get banned and fucking
Whoa, hold on. Don't accuse me of doxing him.
I mean, you just did, so...
No, I didn't dox him at all. Would I be doxing Usain Bolt if Usain Bolt came on here and he was using the fastest man in the world? No, he's a public figure. Jim has been as an open preacher for 25 plus years. He admitted himself. I gave no indication I was going to dox him whatsoever. So please don't tar me with that.
God, dude, no one cares. Just piss off.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, really, Gabe. Just fucking piss off. It's extraneous to the conversation at any rate. It's just you're shouting out personal shit. This is to me no different.
What did I give out that was personal?
We're not 4chan, we're not Metica, we don't really give a shit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you want to stick to the topic, go ahead and stick to the topic. The topic is not who he is. Okay?
The server isn't about digging into people's lives, the server is about talking shit and pretending.
I mean, yeah.
About people's lives.
Stay on topic, man. I'm not going to say it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't say anything.
That was a good one.
I've known Jim for years.
Oh, God. Dude, piss off. Please. No one. Just stop. We don't give a shit about, where Mr. Batman used to work or that shit. We're just here for the lol cows.
Yeah.
Now, if Kathleen would like to continue.
Yeah, sure. So the issue with what Mr. Batman was saying is that Mr. Batman runs the same basic argument that Darth Dawkins does. Obviously, a much more dumbed down version of it, but it's basically the same thing. Now, the issue with that is in order to make the transcendental argument for the existence of God, you must use the leg of the Munchausen's trilemma. What is the coherentist leg of the Munchausen's trilemma built on? Big chum time? Do you know? Oh, he's not there.
Start with authority, which dictates. It's circular, basically.
It's circular! And yet, Mr. Batman claims, as Darth did, that circular reasoning is invalidated, which means, following the use of logic, if Mr. Batman claims that all circular reasoning is invalid, the transcendental argument for the existence of God is invalid because it is built on circular reasoning. I rest my case to the jury. Thank you very much.
Hold on. So Kathleen, have you dropped presuppositionalism? Have you taken up a Descartesian mantle now, or what?
I have dropped presuppositionalism. I do not know what I am going to replace it with. I am interested in Descartes. I am interested in
just a hobby.
foundationalism. But I do think that possibly a combination of both using properly basic beliefs and a coherentist system would be to the benefit of both of them.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know.
maybe building a coherentist justification on top of a properly basic belief
Yeah.
instead of just using a presupposition, as is the functional axiom, would be a much better way to go about it.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. That's the worldview I'm more subscribed to. It's just fun. It's fun for conversation if you act as though, I'm not sure actually. I still think radical doubt about the validity of the laws of logic because self-evidence isn't genuine justification, and you can't have a justification without invoking logic, and you can't have a true justification that's circular. So it's an interesting conundrum.
I have to ask a very important question, though.
Mm-hmm.
I have no butter in the house, and I'm making mashed potatoes, but I do have
shit.
country crock. So should I just use country crock? Or
What's country crock made out of?
No.
Yeah, it's you know, it's better than nothing.
It's margarine, basically.
Oh.
I don't know why you don't just have actual butter, man. Like I honestly, dude,
Well,
my go-to
well,
is either what is it, Kerrygold, which is